you have the BSP following through on its forward guidance. What now? How will they act come December? Or do you see them at least still maintaining that matching stance with the Fed, at least, which is primarily expected to hike rates by at least 50 basis points?
I guess we can talk first about the nature of the inflation. These have three stages. Hopefully, it goes only to two stages. The first stage, of course, is the main source of inflation, which is the price of oil, which eventually created inflation in transport. The second stage is the pass-through. We are in the pass-through mode right now.
Okay.
For example, in the transport, although still in double digit, it's from 14.5% of not last month, it's down to 12.5%. But what is accelerating right now and causing inflation to go up is the pass-through. For example, in food and non-alcoholic beverages, it's gone up from 7.4 to 9.4%. And that's precisely why inflation has gone up. It's because of the pass-through, and precisely because food and non-alcoholic beverages has a bigger weight in the basket of goods. That's why inflation's gone up. Now, this is going to continue to pass through till December, and even to probably January. And we hope we don't get to the third stage, and the third stage is the inflation wage spiral. And what would our government... incidentally, the president has talked about it. The solution is to it's a targeted ayuda, so to speak, instead of raising the wages straightforward. Because eventually, if you do that, it will create to a third wage spiral. I think that's the one that's the key right now, more than the interest rates. Insofar as the interest rates are concerned, it's not really the exchange rate that they are targeting trying to affect. It's the fact that the Fed raising interest rate that causes the depreciation of the peso that results into inflation. But eventually, it's just the inflation. It's just incidental that mechanically it passes through the exchange rate.
Okay.
But nonetheless, we started the year where the interest premium is around 1.9%, almost 2%. And today, before right now, before the interest rate hike, before the matching, the interest rate premium between our interest rate in the United States interest has gone down to less than 0.5%, and because of the 75 basis points, it's back up to 1%. But still, that is less than, the premium is still less than, or the interest differential is still less than what it was at the beginning of the year.
Okay. Now, Prof, you mentioned that the BSP is forced essentially to hike rates to keep this differential at 1%. Have you seen any impact on inflation from the rate hikes that the BSP has done, even inflation expectations, because they just raised the forecast even next year? Why is there no impact on at least inflation expectations for next year, even with these higher rates?
It's precisely because we're still in the pass-through stage, and the pass-through stage is the inflation in transport is still greater than the inflation in food, particularly meat, fish, and vegetable. So it's passing through right now, but precisely because it has nothing to do with the pressure in interest rate per se, but precisely because the weight of fish, meat, and vegetable is bigger than the weight of transport and electricity. That's the one that's causing inflation to accelerate. But in terms of the main source of inflation, which is the price of oil, which is in transport and electricity, they have started to decelerate. Albeit it's still in double digits, but it is starting to decelerate. The one that's are accelerating right now are in the food, in food, particularly meat, fish, and vegetable. And that's the source. It's the fact that these three have bigger weights in the basket of goods of our inflation, that's the one that's causing inflation to pick up.
Okay, but what's the likelihood? Like what you mentioned earlier, as much as possible, let's try to avoid going to that final stage here. But what's the likelihood of us at least entering that particular phase? Especially now, you have, even in previous weeks, a number of groups already calling for increases in wages.
Again, we have two choices. We can have targeted ayuda, or we can raise wages across the board. And if you raise the wages across the board, that's the one that will cause the third stage, which is the spiraling inflation and wage. And that's what I think more than anything else, more than any policy, more than the interest rates, that's what we should be looking at. Do we do targeted subsidy, or do we do increase in general wages? And as long as you do targeted subsidy, we're still okay. And hopefully it doesn't hurt our public finance position. Of course, it's going to hurt. There's no free lunch, but for now, that's the thing that we are to look at.